welcome to the stage Alex Blumberg.
My journey from a non-profit journalist to a CEO. And it's a very unlikely journey because, for one thing, I don't have an MBA, I don't have any business experience. I didn't have any business experience, actually. And in fact, before I got this job as CEO of my own company, I hadn't even worked in the private sector for 20 years. In fact, the last full-time job I had at a for-profit institution was when I bagged groceries in Cincinnati, Ohio, as a teenager at a store called Thriftway. It was for-profit, but it went out of business. So I guess even technically that wasn't for-profit, really. So today what I'm going to talk about is sort of like how did this happen and what I have learned along the way making my way to where I am today. So going back, I worked for many, many years at This American Life. I'm going to speed through this history to get to the good parts. But I worked at This American Life for a long time, and I did all sorts of stories about prisoners putting on plays in prison, about putting on a performance of Hamlet in prison, or going to an aircraft carrier, or people who impersonate their mothers. And then at around 2008, I did a story that sort of was a little bit of a turning point. It was a story about why banks were lending lots and lots of money to people who couldn't possibly have any chance of paying it back. And I'll just play a little clip from the story. That story was called The Giant Pool of Money, and it started with a guy named Clarence who had who had 3 not very steady part-time jobs and made about $45,000 a year, but had somehow gotten a gigantic loan from the bank.
Call it 540 for round figures.
You basically borrowed $540,000 from the bank, and they didn't check your income.
Right. It's a no-income verification loan. They don't call me up and say, how much money. They don't do that. I mean, it's almost like you pass a guy in the street and you say, you lend me $540,000? He said, well, what do you do? I got a job. Okay. I mean, it seems as if it's that casual, even though there are a lot of papers that get filled out and stuff flies all over with the faxes and the emails and all like that. Essentially, that's the process.
Would you have loaned you the money?
I wouldn't have loaned me the money, and nobody that I know would have loaned me the money. I mean, I know guys who are criminals that wouldn't lend me that money, and they'd break your kneecap. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know why the bank did it. I'm serious. I mean, $540,000, a person with bad credit.
So that was like a revelation. Clarence was a revelation to me, and started that story. And the story was basically sort of like explaining, well, why did all of a sudden the financial industry turn on its head and start lending money to people that they never would have lent money to before, and sort of the disaster that became of all that. That became the Giant Pool of Money was a big hit at This American Life, and it sort of like it taught me that like the same tools that we're using to tell stories about heartbreak and love and funny family incidents, we can also sort of bring to really complicated topics like, exotic mortgage-based derivatives. And so from that, with the help of my co-reporter on this story, Adam Davidson, we started something called Planet Money, which, and thank you. Some Planet Money fans in the audience. So many things that I'm going to say on stage tonight, like 10 years ago, I would never have been able to imagine saying. Yeah. Shout out if you love the TED spread. All right. So Planet Money, we started up and it became very successful. And it really showed that, like, yes, you can take this suite of skills that we sort of developed at Planet Money and apply them across a bunch of different subject areas. And I was watching this happen and watching Planet Money sort of grow and get its own huge audience and generate its own excitement. And so I was like, oh, this podcast thing could really work. And that was one lesson I learned. The other lesson was one that I probably shouldn't have learned, but I learned anyway. I learned that I thought I learned that I'm good at business. And that lesson, that wrong lesson I learned from this T-shirt project that we did. So we did a project at Planet Money where we said we're going to explore the global economy through the simple T-shirt, through the lens of a simple T-shirt. Simple T-shirt, we're on our back, but it's basically made all around the world. And what we were going to do is we were going to make a T-shirt and follow it around the world as it got made, from the cotton, where the fields where the cotton was grown, to the factories in Bangladesh and Colombia where the workers actually cut and sewed the T-shirt. And we were going to interview everybody all along the way, and we were going to do this big project. And then at the end, we were going to sell our listeners the T-shirt. And so we sort of like talked about this, did a whole bunch of podcasts about it, and we said, if you want to buy it, go to Kickstarter. And so we thought we'd get like $50,000, maybe, a couple thousand people sign up. In the end, we made almost $600,000 and sold 25,000 T-shirts. So now I'm thinking, like, God damn, am I hot shit. Because I've created this hit podcast and we're making money. And so in the long story tradition of people who think they're hot shit, I decided I didn't need anybody. I was going to branch out on my own. So I went and I had some evidence, right? Like, so if you look, I said, we can start making podcasts independently of NPR. And it's not just, like, I love NPR, I love public media, I love everything that it's done. Not the best business people in the world. So I was thinking, like, maybe we could apply sort of like we could maybe, if we took business lessons from sort of outside of the world of public media and sort of applied them to the same creative force that we have inside the world of public media, we could grow the economic pie. So I thought, I'm going to do that. I'm going to go try to raise money. And if my argument was, if you look at the top podcasts out there, they're all sort of from the NPR world. I know how to do that. Podcasts are coming to the car. There's going to be a button in your car where you can play podcasts. I had all these statistics and stuff. And what I decided to do was do a podcast about trying to start this business. That podcast became Startup, started the business in the summer of 2014, and launched the Startup podcast in September of 2015, so almost exactly a year ago today. And what I ended up documenting, though, was this. I thought it was going to be sort of a publicity stunt, but I ended up documenting a surprisingly emotional journey. And so I'm just going to play you a couple of clips from that. So the first episode began with me pitching an investor, a guy named Chris Sacca. So Chris Sacca is like, it's sort of like saying, you know what, I've never painted anything in my life, and I'm going to learn how to paint, and I'm going to go talk to Jeff Koons, or like I'm going to resuscitate the ghost of Pablo Picasso and then get him to teach me lessons. It's like sort of a crazy thing. It's a crazy place to start, and so. But I didn't know that because I'd met him through a story, so I had sort of this weird access to him that most people wouldn't have had. So I went and pitched him, and I thought it was going to be all great. Ended up not working out so well. So I'm just going to play you a little clip from that pitch. Part of the problem was we met at this sushi restaurant in LA, and I had my little deck with my little laptop, and then he was like, and I was getting ready to show it to him, and then he was like, yeah, actually, let's take a walk. And so I was like, but my laptop. He was like, a pitch deck is a crutch. Let's just take a walk. So we're out on Pico Boulevard, like walking under underpasses, and I'm trying to pitch him, and I have my microphone, and I'm recording the whole thing. And it, needless to say, it didn't go so well.
You got to tighten up your story.
So
We'll start again.
Yeah.
So you've now kind of
All right.
meandered really tight this time. How you're going to make money doing this?
So you make money a combination. So there's three major there's three major revenues streams.
I start again. I meander my way through the ad rates, Planet Money. At a certain point, I find myself deep into an explanation of my friend's successful Kickstarter project. Chris interrupted.
You lost track of your own outline.
Yeah, I did.
What you haven't given me is the outline of your story, right? If I were calling an Uber right now and it said it's going to be here in 2 minutes, and that was all the time you had, what are you doing?
So I'm making a network of digital podcasts that we will monetize. That is going to meet. Sorry.
Okay. Didn't go so well. So I soldiered on. But like so that was episode 1. I would like to say there weren't that many episodes like that, but there were a lot of episodes like that. Episode 2, episode 3, episode 4. But as I was going through this, I realized like, oh, this isn't just a publicity stunt to try to get people sort of like, I had all these listeners at Planet Money and This American Life that sort of maybe knew my work, but I couldn't bring with me because I couldn't, hijack their podcast feeds and direct them to myself. So I had to like sort of generate some publicity about myself to sort of get a listener base for this new company that I was starting. And so that was the original idea of this. But then as I was in it, I was realizing, oh no, this is a story that people think they know, but they don't actually know. Like business formation is something that's happening all the time. But like the story that gets told is so just the top surface of like, dude, we're killing it, or like whatever. Yeah, our startup didn't fail, but I got another idea. Whatever. It's like there's none of the actual things that are actually interesting about it, and even things that you wouldn't think that were interesting, like coming up with the name of your company. It was surprisingly complicated and crazy, and there was like all these legal hurdles, and sort of the trademark registration process is insane, and it's this weird emotional thing. And so like we'd gone through like 5 different names. We'd hit on them that we liked, and then they would get rejected with the trademark search, or like whatever. We'd like somebody else would decide, no, we can't name it that. Anyway, so we'd been doing it for months and months and months, and finally, my co-founder Matt and I were like at his house one day, and we were like we went down this sort of like foreign, like maybe we name it a foreign name, like what's Italian for sound, and they were like, no, that's lame, and then we sort of somehow hit on Esperanto, and we came up with a name that we really liked, and then I went home and I shared that name that we really liked. We were like, this is the one. And we'd been sort of drinking through the afternoon, and we were like totally like, by the end, we're like, yes, this is it. So I came home that afternoon and I shared it with my wife.
Orello.
Orello? Orello. What is that supposed to mean?
Well, it's ear in Esperanto.
That's so dumb.
So dumb, it's good though, right?
What? Whose idea was
It came up organically.
How does that come up organically?
I was like,
Speaking Esperanto?
So it wasn't all just fun and laughs. But the other thing that was really crazy about it, and so part of it was just sort of mining all these like weird things and sort of like putting it out there, like all the things that like what I realized is that like a lot of times the startup narrative gets told, it's told in retrospect, in hindsight, with all the bad parts cut out. And so what I was trying to do was put the bad parts in. Because I felt like, and I had this belief that like if people had ever been through anything close to like this process, probably most people had some of these same feelings. And so everything that was really uncomfortable or embarrassing, I tried to document. And by far, one of the most uncomfortable, embarrassing things that you can do when you're starting a business is decide on how much of the business you own and how much of your co-founder owns. And that's the equity discussion. You have to have it, and you feel like a douchebag having it. First of all, you're like arguing about, like, first of all, you have to sort of say, well, I own this much and I own this much, and that's weird. And also, you're talking about owning nothing, because nothing exists yet, but you have to do it before anything exists, because if you don't, then it gets worse later. So you have to sort of like pretend like you have this big valuable company, even though all you have is an idea that you can't even come up with a name for. So, this is like literally the most probably embarrassing thing I've ever recorded about myself. I don't know if it'll read exactly as embarrassing right away, but when I hear it, I cringe. But this is me and my partner, Matt, trying to decide how much equity we would own. And the backstory is I came up with the idea of the company. Matt joined a little bit later as sort of like I needed a business partner, and he had business experience. And so he and I had talked and really liked each other, and we'd finally arrived at this moment. But I was coming to it from thinking like, this is my idea, you're joining, you're coming along for the ride. He was leaving a big, huge job to take a pay cut to zero to join, so he wanted to be compensated fairly. So this is our conversation.
When I look at the breakdown, I'm thinking of like high 40s to low 50s, so like a 47, 53, or something in that range.
Right.
All right. I was afraid you were going to say that. So the way I've been thinking about this is sort of like I've been talking to various people about like what would be a fair situation, various people have told me various things, but nobody.
People.
Like the highest anybody really got was like 10, 12% in terms of what they thought. I was arguing people up, basically.
I can't imagine doing this for the numbers that you're talking about. I just can't imagine doing it. 10% is just not, like, I can't give this what it needs of me at that level.
So, it's so horrible listening to that. I sound like such a dick, and and I'm wrong. As we eventually got to, like, we got to a much more equitable split, 60-40, which we ended up both feeling very good about. But like that sort of thing, every time we would put out an episode, I was thinking like, okay, this has gone too far. We've shared too much. This is too horrible. Like, people will turn on me. This is a hateful thing to document anyway. like I'm starting a business. Come on. And then everybody, and like it's already. And so far, I've managed to trick people that it's not hateful. And now they were going to realize that I'm an awful person. But I just felt like there was something valuable to sort of revealing those parts of the process as well. And then every time we would do it, like, it would just get like, I went through that too. So many people would sort of like come forward. So that was just really, so there was a couple lessons. First of all, like, going for the pain that you're going through, like, and trying to share that helps. The other thing that I learned, and I'm going to speed through because I'm running out of time, so you're going to hear a weird little audio glitch because I'm going to speed through something. But the other thing I learned is that doing a podcast about how bad you are at selling your idea ends up helping you sell your idea. So we actually ended up raising $1.5 million in seed funding to start this company. And the vast majority of it was raised after the startup podcast went on the air. That surprised me. My plan was I'm going to raise the money and then I'm going to start doing the podcasts. But the money raising was going so slow, we were like, well, let's throw up the podcast anyway. We might as well do that while we're going along. And that became the thing that sort of really sealed the deal. And I was confused about that in the beginning, and then I sort of realized what was going on. I think this is a lesson for any of you out there who are trying to start your thing. You're battling. When you're trying to get people, like, I had a pretty good track record. Like, I'd won awards. I was pretty well known in the field. Like, I thought that I could go to people and say, look, I've done this thing, and I just want to do it more. Give me the money. And people want a little bit more than that. And so I kept on trying to explain to them, and they're like, podcast, Wayne's World. And it's just sort of like this, nobody could get it. And so what I realized is when I did this podcast and it got a little bit of attention and people started listening to it and it sort of climbed the charts in iTunes, it became an example of the thing we were trying to explain. And it's one thing to say, I'm going to make a podcast of narrative podcast full of humor and pathos, and people are like, yeah. But then when I actually did it, and they're like, oh, that's what you're talking about. Yeah, I want to fund that. And that was the thing that sort of like, I think, turned people. So to me, I would have started that process earlier. I would have gotten that thing up and running earlier. I would have just, instead of trying, you're never going to explain the thing as well as you can show them the thing. So like, that's definitely a lesson to take away. So now we have 3 shows up and running: Startup, Reply All, Mystery Show. We have a couple more on the way. Where we are now, we're like, we have a total audience of almost $2 million. Our revenue in the first year was $2 million because of like insanely high ad rates, which after listening to Heather's talk, we really, really need to figure out a second revenue stream. And we're at 24 employees and probably growing. And I'm in another weird audio glitch as I get to my last slide. So one of the things, and then I just want to talk, I was going to turn about lessons, but like screw the lessons. Here's the thing that I'm most excited about doing this thing. And it's going to be, and I'm going to just play you this.
You know, I have a weird
PJ
rash on my
said we
foot.
need
We're
to
not gonna
get-
Okay. The thing I'm most excited about is when you start a business, you sort of think you think this is, maybe this will happen. And at this point, a year into it, I am now starting to see things that I never could have imagined happen. And that is the most exciting thing. And the example of that is from the show Reply All. They performed here last night. Hopefully some of you got to see them. It's an amazing show about the internet. PJ Vogt is right there. Alex Goldman somewhere in the audience. I don't see him. Alex, are you around? I can't see you anyway. Sorry. Oh, he's in the back. But they were the first show that we launched after a startup, and they were in it from the very beginning, and we didn't know what we were doing, and we came on and like we sort of recorded this. Our first episode was up, and we were trying to, and then we were like, and everything was new, and we were like, okay, so outside of public radio, what do we say at the end of shows? Like, do we, who do we thank? What do we say? And so we sort of had to come up with it on the fly, like who we did. And then they got to Matt Lieber, who's my co-founder running the business side, is a person that doesn't really exist. PJ and Alex both came from public radio. I came from public radio. Matt Lieber as a function doesn't really exist in public radio. We didn't know what to say about him in the credits, but we definitely wanted to talk about him in the credits. And so they came to Matt Lieber steers the ship. And they said that for a couple of times, and then they started sort of inventing new things to say about Matt Lieber, and it became a thing that they did at the end of the show.
Reply All is me, PJ Vogt, and Alex Goldman. We were produced this week by Shruti Pinamaneni and Chris Neary. We were edited by Alex Blumberg and Paul Ford. We were mixed by the Reverend John Delore. Matt Lieber is a comforter, accidentally warmed by the radiator.
And that happened, and then every show then they would do a new Matt Lieber.
Matt Lieber is the solution to a problem that's been bothering you for a while. Matt Lieber is a window in a room where you didn't think there was one. Matt Lieber is Estonia.
And it became such a thing that there's a site called Reddit. This appeared. What are all the Matt Liebers? And then they sort of listed all the Matt Liebers, and then there's like, Matt Lieber is a memory of summer and a winter that seems to go on forever. Matt Lieber is the smell of laundry. The HBO Go login. So all these Matt Liebers. So that in itself is wonderful enough. But then the most magical thing happened, which is this show number, which one was it? 36. I'm going to go over a little bit, I'm sorry. But show number 36 happened, and I'm just going to start the show. This is the exact way, unedited, this is how it started.
From Gimlet, this is Reply All, a show about the internet. I'm PJ Vogt.
And I'm Alex Goldman.
In this week's episode, it's a little different. We're going to focus mostly on how computers work. And we're going to start by interviewing an expert on transistors. This guy doesn't seem to be picking up.
I feel kind of relieved. I have 0 questions about transistors.
Could we just roll the credits?
Reply All is me, PJ Vogt with Alex Goldman. We were produced this week by Tim Howard, Shruti Pinamaneni, and Thea Benin. We were edited this week by Alex Blumberg. Our show was mixed by the Reverend John Delore. Matt Lieber is a job that you love so much that you actually sort of forget to go outside. And then one day you just find yourself wondering, has the 4th of July happened yet? And so you look out a window and you realize actually it's the end of August. Summer's almost over. And you just feel this tiny little teaspoon of regret. And then you realize you could just go outside. The building has an elevator. What if you took it? It's nice outside.
Yeah, it's pretty beautiful.
Where are we right now?
We're at Central Park, bro.
We're at Central Park.
And they go on, and they have an entire adventure in New York City, and it's all part of the Matt Lieber. And it was one of our most popular shows, and it is something that I never could have imagined when I started this company. And that, I feel like, is the reason that we're all trying to start things, is because what we want to do is make a place where things that we couldn't have imagined can grow. And it's been like unbelievably gratifying to see that happen with Gimlet. So thank you very much.